Jesus Christ, people, I didn't say that backstabs were working as intended. I'm just saying that you do not expect the backstabs to work as DS3. And I'm clearly not saying that they do not need patching. I'm just trying to adapt to the game the way it is, right? So my opinion is that they wanted to nerf the backstabs in order for the jumping attacks to have more viability in the game, in the PvP, because if the backstabs were working as in DS3, then jumping attacks would be roll backstab punished, and that would clearly deter people from using those attacks. So yeah, I think we're done with that, right? I'm not like an Elden Ring network test champion that defends the game for what it is right now. It's clearly broken and it clearly needs a lot of fixes. And speaking of fixes, please visit Gabri's post on Reddit. I'll have it linked in the description, and please let From Software know that if you're interested in PvP, this is not acceptable. This is far from acceptable. What's this? This is host lag. Do you remember host summon lag from DS3? This is the same thing. And also glitches are still here thanks to G9 Gabri and G9's viewers. We now know that all the glitches from previous games are here. Like this, you can get infinitely stun locked, or the Estes cancel, or weapon art swap, or moveset swap. So please visit Gabri's post on Reddit and please let them know that this needs to be fixed. Now, regarding invasions. Invasions in the open world are mostly a battle of attrition, because if the party does not chase you, or they choose to just camp and stay there and stay together, you don't have many options for them. In DS3, you knew what direction the party would be headed, you knew where they were gonna go, you knew that they would have to pass these enemies, you knew where you could just do your ambushes, but here in the open world they can go in any direction, and you're gonna have to improvise. And improvising is not so easy, and mostly because your opponents are gonna have ranged attacks. They're gonna have spells, they're gonna have weapon arts, and they can spam you all day with magic and with weapon arts and with bows and chasing you down. And this can prove really difficult for most of us normal mortals, unless you're G9, and you can just splash their faces to the ground. But for normal mortals, invasions can be really tough, and they're mostly a battle of attrition, because they have more heals and they choose to stay back, and each time you decide to fight, you mostly trade, because most hits are trades. If you see any PvP video that you'll see, 90% of the hits are trades. Anyway, regarding my weapon of choice, I chose the Great Lance because you need to have range. If you do not have range options, you're gonna have a really bad time, because characters are very mobile, are more mobile than Bloodborne. The animations are not so fast, the weapon animations are not so fast, but the movement of the characters is pretty much, they can do anything they want. So you're gonna have to use some weapons that have reach. That's why I used the Great Lance, and most people that participated in the network test ended up using the Great Lance, because besides the reach, it also has hyper armor. Yeah, hyper armor is a thing. It has hyper armor on rolling attacks for whatever reason. Then again, it's your choice, and this is just a network test, and they're clearly working on it. You see me using this weapon art a lot, Determination it's called. The reason I'm using it is because shields, for whatever reason, they are powerful. They were powerful in the network test. I mean, if you try to attack a shield with a light weapon, one-handed, like with a straight sword, I didn't try attacking them two-handed with a straight sword. The weapon will bounce back, like if you're hitting a wall. Plus, you won't do a lot of stamina damage with any attacks on the shields, even with the straight sword guard breaks. That's why I'm buffing my Great Lance with this weapon art. This is like the True Strike spell in Dungeons & Dragons, if you've played it. It will buff your damage, and if the enemy is blocking, it will buff your stamina damage, and most of the shields will pop open with that. So yeah, shields were a nuisance in the network test, but I think it was something that they were experimenting on. I'm not sure that in the final product the shields are gonna be so powerful as they were now. The hitboxes are very, very precise. I mean, really precise. After this jump attack, what's the next one? I miss it. In Dark Souls, I think that would have hit because the hitbox of some weapons starts from the hand, and it does so for the lance here too, I think. But being that the hitbox were really small, I missed that attack. And that translates pretty good in latency fights as well. You do not get as many phantom hits from phantom range as you would get in Dark Souls. It's not that there's no phantom range, there's still some phantom range, but generally the hitboxes are perfect the way they are, and the tracking, even if you're unlocked, is really good. Regarding passive poise, I think I will make the most use of it once the game comes out as a frame advantage tool. After an enemy hits me and I keep hitting on them to take the offensive on them. And I'm not saying it's bad, I'm saying it's good, and I like it the way it is. I also like the hyper armor that there is. There's hyper armor in some attacks, like I said in the Great Lance rolling attack, and for whatever reason I only found the Great Lance to have hyper armor. I mean, the Bastard Sword, which is a great sword, didn't have hyper armor, and that was pretty confusing because, you know, you have your Dark Souls 3 experiences and you expect different things. You expect different things to have hyper armor, and it seemed pretty weird, to be honest. I don't know if it is because I'm just used to DS3 hyper armor, or if it because you know, you're using a freaking great sword. I mean, you're supposed to have hyper armor, don't you? And to be honest, I also found it weird that you do not get hyper armor for the reversal attacks. Like, he blocks me and he does an R2. And he wouldn't get a hyper armor on that. I could interrupt that guy. So I don't know why they chose to do that, to go that way. Then again, if you have hyper armor on a reversal attack, all you would do on PvE at least was just block and attack back, block and attack back. And it would make PvE a piece of cake, I guess, even for one player fighting an enormous boss. Like, if you could just tank everything and just, you know, block and then tank, block and then tank, then it wouldn't make any sense to have hyper armor on that. But why would that ability in the first place if you do not plan to give it at least some kind of advantage besides the damage? I mean, then again, they're just testing things, I guess. So when you're fighting a group, if the group does not have a lot of ranged options, you're not gonna have too much trouble, because they will either have to chase you down with their weapons, and if they cannot throw anything at you, they cannot stop you. And that is only if they decide to chase you, because camping is always an option. These guys here were good sports, and they actually humored me and fought me fair and square, while they could just go back to the side of grace and just sit there and start the psychological war that all gangs do to invaders, where they camp at the bonfire and just hang back and do nothing, and they wait for the invaders to come there and just run into their weapons. And that's the reason I believe that open world invasions aren't gonna be a very big thing for invaders. Because if the party doesn't want to progress, you do not have a confined space to force them to come out of. You can always start throwing firebombs and stuff and be a nuisance, but I don't think it's gonna play out like DS3 invasions, where you would just force the party with various spells, you know, throwing like a whip behind the wall, or throwing pestilent mist behind the wall, and anyway, generally something to force them to move. In the open world, they can see everything, and you're gonna have to force them with some other way. You can always teleport and go away and, you know, meet them somewhere else, and that is only if they decide to move, though. And speaking of moving, if the host decides to leg it, to just leave, they can just do that. And I had an invasion. My very last invasion in the network test was a host that was summoning blues and had a phantom. I killed the phantom, and then a blue came and another invader came, and the host simply decided to run away, and they ran the whole way from the castle gates. Instead of going back, instead of entering the boss arena from the castle gates, they decided to run back to the very first bonfire when you get out of the tutorial area. And I ran the whole map with them. We were running for like 10 minutes, and that was like the most frustrating thing. And it was not because my lack of ability to chase them, right? I had a bow, I had throwables, I had spells I was throwing at them, but they were using the Fab Glitch, because the Fab Glitch is back, right? And they were using the Fab Glitch, they were running with infinite stamina, and if they decide to do that in the open world, even without the Fab Glitch, they can do that. As easy as it is for you to get away from a gang, it's so easy for the host to run away from you. So please keep that in mind. I don't think that open world invasions are gonna be a preferable choice of invasions for the community. Like, take this invasion for example. I teleported a couple of times on these guys to see if they would change areas, if they would move around, but they stayed in the same neutral area with no threats nearby. And if they do not decide to move, you cannot force them in any way. You can fight them, you can try to fight them, but it actually turns into a fight of attrition if there are no enemies nearby. And it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's a really frustrating thing, you know. Like, these guys had spells, both of them, and for every hit I landed on one of them, the other one was hitting me with a spell and dealing more damage to me than I dealt to them. And actually that's where passive poise comes into play, because if they were chasing me, and that's a big if for those guys, if they were chasing me, they wouldn't be able to stun me that easily with their spells, because I would have passive poise and I would be able to run away and not get stunned. But if the party decides to camp in a network test where you have limited time to play the game, imagine what they would do when the game releases and they have all the time in the world to play, right? And you play the waiting game and none of you moves. I don't know if I'm missing something or if I'm not good enough to drag them out, but at least that's my experience. And that's why I think that legacy dungeons are gonna be preferable from invaders. Because the open world doesn't offer so many opportunities for an invader to actually engage the party and deal some damage. You're mostly gonna get punished for trying to even fight one of them. And anyway, I'm not gonna show you the whole invasion, I'm just gonna show you the end of it. What I take from this game and the invasion mechanic is that while it does seem appealing to invade in an open world, it is clearly a battle of attrition, and without having the ability to refill and the host can infinitely summon phantoms or blues, this is gonna be a hard time for invaders. Then again, we're invaders, we're used to it, we don't mind it that much. Just be ready guys, do not get frustrated when this comes. But I'm waiting on the crafting system to have something to heal you, like you can craft consumables that can heal you. The party may be able to use them too, but then again, you will have something to fight them with. You will buy more time with that ability. So it was really fun playing this game. I cannot wait for the final release. The invasion seems awesome, the PvP seems awesome, and I think with a little balancing and glitch fixing, this can be a truly awesome game.